Ladies and gentlemen, before we can speak about love, we must first speak about ourselves. Too often, we rush into relationships searching for someone to mend the broken places within us, to quiet the loneliness we fear, to make us feel whole. But the truth is, no one can complete what we have not yet claimed within. Tonight, I want to take you into a different understanding that the greatest gift you can bring to love is not your longing, but your wholeness. Solitude is presence, not absence. To many, the word solitude stirs images of emptiness, of something missing, of a gap that needs to be filled. But this is only because they have been taught to believe that meaning is found outside of themselves in others, in constant activity, in perpetual noise. Yet when all those outer distractions fade, what remains is not a void. What remains is you, standing in the fullness of your own being. In the stillness of solitude, the mind begins to settle like a lake after a storm. The ripples of thought slow, the turbulence of daily demands fades, and a deeper current of awareness emerges. This presence is not lonely, it is alive. It is as if the soul, so often buried under the weight of roles, obligations, and expectations, finally steps forward and speaks. In the presence of solitude, you can hear this voice, the one that knows your fears, your desires, and the parts of yourself you have neglected. Many people resist solitude because it exposes what they have hidden. When there is no one else to mirror back an identity, you are left to confront the unvarnished truth of who you are. This can be unsettling. Without the distraction of another's presence, you may notice the restlessness you've been carrying for years. You may encounter unresolved pain, old disappointments, or the uncomfortable awareness of dreams you have abandoned, but this confrontation is not a punishment, it is an invitation. It is the chance to meet yourself beyond the surface layers and discover the depths you have never explored. In solitude, every external reference point is stripped away. The comparisons, the subtle performances, the silent negotiations of relationship, they fall silent. You begin to sense the raw texture of your own existence, untouched by the gaze or expectations of another. There is a kind of purity here, an authenticity that does not need to be proven or explained. You can simply exist without justification, without striving to fit into a frame someone else has built for you. This presence in solitude is also fertile ground for creativity and vision. When you are constantly surrounded by others, your thoughts and ideas are influenced, shaped, and often diluted by the flow of conversation and collective expectation. Alone, your mind can follow its own path without interruption. You may find yourself drawn to create something, to write, to paint, to explore ideas that feel entirely your own. The absence of external voices allows the inner voice to grow clearer, more confident, and more distinct. It is in these moments that many people discover not just new thoughts, but entirely new dimensions of themselves. Yet, solitude is not merely about the individual self. It also opens a doorway to the larger mysteries of existence. Without the constant chatter of human interaction, you can hear the subtler rhythms of life, the whisper of the wind, the slow movement of the sun, the pulse of your own heartbeat. Time stretches differently here. Moments are not rushed, they unfold. The present moment becomes expansive, rich, and textured. In this expansion, you may sense a deeper connection to the world around you, as if the boundaries between yourself and life itself begin to soften. To see solitude as absence is to misunderstand its nature. It is not the lack of something, it is the presence of everything that is often overlooked. It is the meeting point between who you are now and who you are becoming. It is the space where transformation begins quietly, without announcement, in the privacy of your own awareness. The longer you remain in this space, the more you realize that nothing essential is missing. Instead, what is essential has finally been allowed to appear. When you embrace solitude as presence, you no longer fear being alone. You begin to see it as a kind of sanctuary, a place you can return to again and again for clarity, strength, and renewal. It is not withdrawal from life, but a deeper entry into it, one that starts from within and radiates outward. And once you have touched this presence, you carry it with you, even in the busiest of crowds. It becomes a silent anchor, reminding you that you are whole, that you are here, and that you belong not because someone else says so, but because you have claimed the truth of your own existence. Self-reflection is the purest mirror. It does not distort, flatter, or conceal. It shows you exactly what is there without the filters of social approval or the disguises you wear to fit into the expectations of others. It is a mirror untouched by the fingerprints of other people's opinions, free from the fog of praise or criticism. In its gaze, you are revealed in your truest form, not as you wish to be seen, but as you are. When you turn inward in genuine self-reflection, you step away from the noise of the outer world and listen to the quieter truths that live within you. This is not an easy process. Most people prefer the comfort of external mirrors, the feedback of friends, the validation of social circles, the predictable reactions of those who know them, but these are not pure reflections. They are colored by the perspectives, emotions, and biases of others. In self-reflection, there is no one to soften the truth or exaggerate your virtues. There is only the unfiltered encounter with yourself. This pure mirror shows not only the qualities you admire in yourself, but also the parts you avoid. It reveals the unhealed wounds, the habits that weaken you, the fears that dictate your choices. These are the elements that are easy to overlook when life is busy and relationships are distracting. But when you pause and truly look inward, you see them standing silently in the corners of your mind. They have been there all along, shaping your path, influencing your reactions, and whispering in the background of your thoughts. Self-reflection also illuminates your patterns. You may begin to notice how often you compromise your needs to please others, or how frequently you react out of fear rather than clarity. You might see the cycles you repeat in relationships, in work, in your private thoughts patterns so familiar that they felt invisible until the pure mirror made them visible. This awareness can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it is also profoundly liberating. For once you see these patterns, you have the chance to break them. The purity of this mirror lies in its honesty. It does not lie to protect your ego, nor does it attack you to break your spirit. It simply shows what is, and in doing so, offers the possibility of transformation. You cannot change what you cannot see, and self-reflection gives you the sight you need to begin that change. It is a form of truth, telling that is private and deeply personal. No one else needs to witness it, but its effects will ripple into every aspect of your life. This mirror also reflects your strengths, but in a way that is deeper than compliments. It shows you the resilience you displayed in moments when no one else noticed, the kindness you gave when there was nothing to gain, the discipline you held onto when quitting would have been easier. These are the qualities that external mirrors often miss because they are not performed for an audience. They are lived in silence, known only to you. In seeing them clearly, you learn to trust yourself more, to recognize your own worth without waiting for permission from others. True self-reflection requires patience and courage. You must be willing to sit with discomfort, to face not only the beauty but also the contradictions within you. It asks for a kind of honesty that can feel raw, because there is no one to blame or to rescue you from what you see. It is both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it shows you how far you have yet to grow, empowering because it proves you have the capacity to grow at all. Over time, this pure mirror becomes less frightening. The more you look into it, the less you feel the need to hide from yourself. You begin to approach it not with dread, but with curiosity. You start to see that the truth, no matter how sharp, is also a gift, a guide that points you toward a more authentic way of living. And the more you live in alignment with what you see, the more the reflection becomes one you can meet without flinching, because it no longer shows a stranger. It shows you, unmasked and undivided, fully present in your own life. Unattached energy fuels transformation. When your energy is no longer bound by the constant pull of external demands, it begins to move differently. It is no longer scattered, no longer drained by the invisible threads of obligation, compromise, and emotional negotiation. It becomes concentrated, focused, and available for the work of inner change. In this state, what was once spent on maintaining relationships or managing others' expectations is redirected inward, feeding the processes of growth that require both attention and strength. To understand this, imagine the way water behaves. When it flows freely down a river, it spreads out, touching everything along its path. But when it is contained, directed, and channeled, it gains force enough to carve stone, power turbines, and reshape landscapes. Human energy works in much the same way. When it is constantly given away in fragments to the demands of a partner, the weight of social obligations, the quiet but persistent pressure to meet someone else's needs, it loses the intensity required for deep transformation. But when it is held within, not in selfish hoarding but in mindful preservation, it gains the power to reshape the self from the inside out. Unattached energy does not mean emotional coldness. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself that you have unconsciously handed over to others. It is the choice to step back from the constant reflex to give, to please, to manage, or to fix, and instead to sit with your own inner landscape. In doing this, you begin to see the areas of your life that have long been neglected, not because they were unimportant, but because your energy was too divided to address them. When your energy is unattached, it naturally turns toward creation. You find yourself drawn to pursuits that have been postponed for years, projects you once dismissed as impossible, dreams you left to gather dust because you believed you lacked the time, the focus, or the emotional space. Without the silent drain of constant external demands, you discover that you are capable of far more than you imagined. This is not a sudden burst of willpower, but a steady, sustainable current that pushes you forward day by day. Transformation requires more than desire, it requires resources. Energy is one of the most essential resources you have. When it is tied up in unresolved conflicts, in the endless loops of trying to be enough for someone else, in the constant adjustments to fit into another person's rhythm, there is little left for you. But when those attachments loosen, when you allow yourself to be whole without being tethered, you find that energy begins to return to you. It comes back like a tide, slow at first, then stronger, until it becomes a force you can work with consciously. In this state, you begin to see possibilities where before you only saw limits. You start to experiment with change-altering routines, exploring new ways of thinking, engaging in practices that nourish rather than deplete you. Small shifts build on each other, and because your energy is no longer being siphoned away, these shifts take root. They become habits, then foundations, and eventually they transform the way you live entirely. Unattached energy also sharpens awareness. Without the emotional static of constantly managing relationships, you can hear the subtler signals of your own intuition. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by the fear of how someone else will react. You begin to act from alignment rather than appeasement. This clarity allows you to move more decisively, to commit to paths that once seemed uncertain, and to release those that no longer serve you. There is also a deep sense of sovereignty in holding your energy this way. You are no longer defined by how much you give to others, but by how consciously you choose where to place your attention and effort. This is not isolation, it is intentionality. You recognize that transformation is not a passive event, it is an active process fueled by the energy you have reclaimed and directed with purpose. When your energy is unattached, every step you take carries more weight. Each choice becomes more deliberate, each action more aligned with the person you are becoming. You are no longer pulled in directions that weaken you. Instead, you move in ways that strengthen you, building momentum toward a life that reflects your true nature rather than one shaped by the constant compromise of attachment. And in that momentum, transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Wholeness must come before love. Without wholeness, love becomes an attempt to fill a gap, to mend a fracture, to complete something we believe is missing within ourselves. It turns into a search for a rescuer rather than a genuine meeting of equals. When we are not whole, we approach relationships with an unspoken demand, make me feel complete. And while this may sound romantic in the language of films and stories, in reality it places an invisible weight on the other person, a weight no one can carry without eventually breaking. Wholeness is the state of knowing and accepting yourself fully, not because you are flawless, but because you have faced and integrated all that you are. It is the recognition that your value does not depend on another's approval, and that your happiness does not rely on someone else's constant presence or validation. This does not mean you close yourself off from love, but that you enter it without the desperation that comes from feeling incomplete. You are able to give freely rather than cling, to receive without fear of losing yourself in the process. When you are whole, you can meet another person from a place of abundance. You are not looking to take what they have in order to fill an emptiness, but to share what you already possess. This changes the entire nature of the relationship. It shifts the dynamic from dependence to interdependence, two individuals who choose to walk together, not because they cannot stand alone, but because they value the journey more when shared. Such love is richer, steadier, and less prone to the storms that tear apart relationships built on unmet needs. Wholeness requires that you turn inward before you turn outward. It asks you to explore your own shadows, to heal the wounds you have carried, to reclaim the parts of yourself you have abandoned for the sake of acceptance. It may mean confronting loneliness instead of running from it, learning to be content in your own company, and discovering that your worth is not measured by whether or not someone else chooses you. These are not easy tasks, but they are essential ones. Without them, love becomes a fragile structure built on unsteady ground. When you are whole, you are free from the constant fear of loss. You may still grieve if a relationship ends, but you will not feel as though you have lost yourself. You will not crumble into pieces because you have already learned to hold yourself together. This gives you a quiet strength, a resilience that allows you to love more openly. Paradoxically, it is the absence of neediness that allows for deeper intimacy, because the other person feels the freedom to be themselves without the pressure of being your sole source of happiness. Wholeness also changes the way you choose love. When you are incomplete, you may settle for anyone who offers attention, mistaking temporary comfort for lasting connection. You may overlook red flags or accept mistreatment because the fear of being alone feels greater than the pain of staying. But when you are whole, you no longer make decisions from fear. You choose partners who respect your boundaries, who encourage your growth, and who add to your life rather than diminishing it. This does not mean you will never face challenges in love. Even two whole individuals will encounter moments of misunderstanding, frustration, and conflict. But these challenges will be approached differently with a willingness to communicate, to compromise without losing oneself, and to work together without falling into patterns of blame and dependency. Wholeness provides the stability that allows love to weather these storms rather than collapse under their weight. The journey toward wholeness is deeply personal. It is shaped by the experiences you have lived, the lessons you have learned, and the truths you have uncovered about yourself. It is not a state you reach once and never touch again, but a continual practice of self-awareness and self-care. The more you nurture this wholeness, the more naturally you will attract love that is healthy, balanced, and enduring. When you understand and embody this, love becomes a choice, not a necessity. It is no longer the air you breathe, but a garden you tend, beautiful, nourishing, and thriving, yet not the only source of your life. And in that space, love becomes what it was always meant to be, a union of two complete beings who meet, not to complete each other, but to walk together in the fullness they already hold. When you arrive at love already whole, you do not come as a beggar at the door, but as a guest bringing something precious to the table. You give not out of scarcity, but out of abundance, and in this way, love is no longer a remedy for emptiness, but a celebration of completeness. So, before you search for the one who will walk beside you, become the one who can stand on their own, for in that strength, love will find its truest form.